Hey, welcome to Rothline Live. My name is Larry Roth, and I will be your host for the evening. So, what I'm doing this evening is to give everybody an update. First of all, I apologize for being late. I try to start these YouTube live episodes at 8 o'clock Central Time on Thursday night. I had to run some errands, so I was running behind and unfortunately did not start on time. So let's start with my background. I wanted to point out this background because I love it. And other people seem to like this as well. Now, this is a cloth. It's a picture of an old fashioned library, and I got this off of Amazon. So the videos that I make, and also when I do Zoom calls or Teams calls, I use this as my background. I also have a neighbor that was doing some job interviews, and she wanted to use my office because of this nice background. So I've got a lot of good, positive comments about the background. So I wanted to point that out. I finally completed episode 4. So on the Mistress of the Hex House video series that I'm working on. To reiterate, the Hex House is about Mrs. Carolann Smith, who was discovered by the police in 1944 in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that she had kept 2 ladies captive and used them as slaves and servants in the basement of her home on 10 East 21st Street. And she was arrested in March of 1944. And then the Tulsa World at the time carried most of the news articles, or published most of the news articles about this event. And it became a sensational breaking news story. The entire nation became obsessed and interested in it. So what I've done, when I first started YouTube, which is about 4 years ago, I made a video about the Hex House, and it has been for 4 years in the top 10 every month most watched video that I have. So I decided to go back and revisit that story and dive deeper into it and find out more details about what was going on with the Hex House. So a shout out and a thank you to the Tulsa City County Library for letting me go to their archives area, and they have a file on the Hex House, and I was able to make copies of those documents. So I have 62 pages about the Hex House. Most of them are Tulsa World articles from 1944. Some of them are Tulsa Tribune articles. There's also some other various articles in there. There's an article from the Abilene Times from Abilene, Texas. There's an article from a New York City newspaper. So this story, it broke and it became a nationwide story. So since this video that I published about 4 years ago has consistently been in the top 10 videos that I have made, and I have made about 120 videos over the last 4 years. Excuse me. So I decided to research these articles, find out more about the story, and my goal is to eventually have 10 videos in the series that talk about the details of the Hex House, what happened before, during, and after the Hex House. It's a fascinating story, even after the events of Carolann Smith. There's some information about the Actor Shrine, which owned the property for several years. And then there is also the people the crew, Gene Watson and the crew that started the Hex House haunted attraction in 2008 that was inspired by this Hex House story. And I'm going to include all of that information in the video series. Right now, I'm going to be working on episode 5. I do not have a name for that episode yet. I tend to come up with the names of the episodes or the titles after I do the research and come up with an outline for the story. Episode 4 was called The Mistress and Nell Walita Horner. Now, Nell Walita Horner was the second victim of Carolann Smith. Virginia Evans was the first one. So episode 4 starts out talking about Carolann Smith meeting Nell Walita Horner for the first time. They met in 1938 at a grocery store. Mrs. Smith was still living at the Sophian Plaza Park Apartments at the time, which is a luxurious apartment complex that is actually still open. I went to visit it the other day. It's a really nice apartment complex. It was built, I believe, in 1920, and Carolann Smith lived there probably mid-1920s to about 1938. So she lived a luxurious life. But anyway, she met Walita Horner. And so episode 4 talks about them meeting and about Walita moving into the house or moving into the apartment of Mrs. Smith. And the story deals with how Mrs. Smith seemed like a kind, good person at first. And then it just slowly gets worse. She becomes more demanding, more controlling, and then she starts to become cruel, and even whips and beats Virginia and Walita. Now, episode 5 will go into more detail of the Hex House, because at the end of episode 4 is when the ladies actually move into the Hex House. So episode 5 will probably deal with the amount of time that they were actually at the Hex House before the story actually broke in 1944. And then after that, I'm going to have some episodes about probably episode 6 will deal with the trial of Mrs. Smith. And the trial brought out a lot of information about what was going on. There's just a lot of really interesting, juicy details about Carolann Smith and the things that she did. For one thing, she loved luxury. She loved money. She loved luxury. She loved nice clothes. She loved jewelry. She loved nice shoes. And she was known for wearing her big, expensive, luxurious hats. So she also lived a life of luxury from the time that she was a small child up until the death of her husband in 1934. And so she was well taken care of, but she wanted to continue to live a life of luxury. She was a Tulsa socialite. She knew a lot of the Tulsa socialites from that time period. And matter of fact, one of the Tulsa socialites actually helped provide money for her bond when she was arrested. So, interesting story. Interesting events as to what happened during the time that these 3 ladies were at the Hex House. Also interesting, after the trial, I'll probably get into this in episode 7, will be after the trial, after Carolann Smith has gone to prison because she went to prison for 1 year. Then she was released from prison, and nobody really knows what happened to her after that. I mean, she just kind of disappeared, and she probably changed her name because she was really into having false identities. She went by several different names. In fact, Carolann isn't even her real name. She was born as Opal Mary Carey, and then later changed her name to Carolann Meredith Smith after she got married. Then she went by some other names. She had a false marriage license with a man named Richard Basil Fontaine, who was imaginary. He didn't even exist. Um, there's two different versions of how that came to be. One of the versions is Virginia and Walida claimed that Mrs. Smith just looked up the name in a phone book. There's also another version where they claim that they wrote names down on some paper and put it in a bowl and then drew the pieces of paper out and came up with a name that way. Anyway, so she had different aliases, different fake names. Let's see, where was I at? Went to prison, was out of prison. Oh, after that, I will get into the details of the Akdar Shrine because there was some interesting events that took place after they bought the property, and they actually had the house torn down, if I remember correctly. Excuse me. They had the house torn down and they turned it into a parking lot, and there were some mysterious, strange things that happened on the parking lot, like the cars would start up by themselves, cars would start moving by themselves. I don't know if that is true or if that's just stories that the Akdar Shrine started or somebody started. Golly, I'm gonna have a coughing attack. I'll have to edit that out later. So Akdar Shrine owned the property for a while. They had a parking lot. They actually wanted to build a multi-level parking lot, but the Maple Ridge Neighborhood Association or the Maple Ridge Association voted against allowing the Akdar Shrine to build a multi-level garage. So they just kept it as just a single level parking lot. And the interesting thing about the parking lot is the stairs to the Hex House are still there. You can actually visit the parking lot, walk up and down the stairs. There's stairs on two different sides that went up to where the Hex House was. The Akdar Shrine sold the property. I don't remember the name of the company that owns the property now. They're actually in the process of trying to sell it. Then after the Akdar Shrine, there is some information that I'm going to provide about Gene Watson and his crew that started the Hex House haunted attraction. And this is something that I'm really looking forward to. That will probably be closer to August before I get to do the interview with Gene Watson and his crew. But from what I understand, is they have some mysterious paranormal ghost stories to tell about some incidents that occurred when they started the Hex House haunted attraction. For those fans of mine who have been watching my channel, mostly for the Bigfoot stories, I am going to get back into telling the Bigfoot stories. I've been doing some research. I have about 28 stories or 28 Bigfoot encounters that took place in Arkansas. So last year, I spent most of that year, actually, I spent all of that year talking about Bigfoot encounters that took place in Oklahoma. This year, I'm going to focus on Arkansas, and probably the year after that, focus on Texas. So, those of you that have been watching my channel to watch the Bigfoot stories, I will have some more of those coming up. It's just a matter of time trying to work a full-time job and do this as a hobby and get those videos put together. But I will get those put together and get those published, and get those out so everybody can watch them. Some of the other things that I plan on also doing, one of my other number one watched videos that I also published 4 years ago, and every month it is in the top 10 most watched YouTube videos that I have, and it's the Oklahoma Deer Lady. So I do plan to do some more research on the Oklahoma Deer Lady and provide some more videos about that. I do want to talk to some Native Americans. It's a Native American folklore tale. I believe it's the Lakota tribe. I hope I said that right. Is one of the main tribes that had stories. A lot of the tribes did have stories about the Deer Lady, and it's an interesting story. I would like to dive in and get some more details about that and present that also in a series of videos. I believe that is probably all that I have to tell you. Thank you all for watching. I have provided my social media links in the video description. I have some videos that I put on TikTok and also Instagram, and also Facebook are the primary ones, and YouTube, of course, primary social media sites that I put videos and information on. I also have my own website called rothline.com that has sort of existed in limbo for almost 20 years. But I am improving the website, putting information on the website about the Bigfoot stories and also about the Hex House. So some interesting stuff regarding that website and stuff that I'm getting on that website. And I'm going to try to make an effort to do this YouTube live every Thursday around 8 p.m. Central Time. Unfortunately, I was running late today. I had to run some errands and didn't get back in time to actually get started at 8 o'clock. But that is my goal. Thursdays at 8 p.m. Central Time. Rothline Live with your host, me, Larry Roth. That's it. Have a great evening, and I will see you next Thursday.